My first question for you is, most people have this love-hate relationship when it comes to food. I certainly do. It could be feeling guilt and shame when you peek into that fridge at 3 a.m. It could be boredom because of the monotony of eating the same food. It could be a stress reliever if you're eating some sweets when you have anxiety or stress. It seems to happen for a lot of people these days. How can we start to have more of a healthier relationship with food?
There's a lot to unpack in what you just shared with me. It is true that many people have a love-hate relationship with food, but it actually is a inversion of how we are hardwired to be. We are hardwired to actually really enjoy our food and to be able to, we got taste buds, we got brains that actually respond with pleasure signals to the right foods. And we have a metabolism that actually is jacked up so that we know when we need to eat and we know when we're full. And I think that if we follow our own internal wiring, the operating system that is in our body, we'll actually be able to have a healthier relationship with food. I think what's happened is that food in a modern, industrialized, high-pressure society, with a lot of advertising, with a lot of peer pressure, with a lot of emphasis on weight loss, fitness, you name it. You take that box and you throw all these complex social dynamics into it. We wind up actually getting further and further away from our hardwiring, our operating system of our body, and then we are stuck rummaging around the pantry at 3 a.m. or the fridge at 3 a.m. and then feeling guilty about it. So what I would tell you is that if you look at the healthiest societies in the world and the healthiest food cultures, and two of them that are spring to my mind from the research I've been doing is in the Mediterranean and also in Asia. Both cultures have long had food cultures that intertwine with health. In the Mediterranean, what you eat is part of who you are and who your people are, your tribe, and there's a great deal of pride in it. People eat together, they cook traditional recipes, they enjoy their foods. They tend not to overeat, and they tend to prefer what, their bodies are trained to prefer, and their culture's trained to prefer what works out for them, which happens to be very healthy. And I think the same in Asia. If you take a look at Japan, Korea, China, Southeast Asia, very much the food is part of the culture, and the health is part of is intertwined with the food culture as well. In westernized countries, and the Mediterranean is also the West, but with a lot of Eastern influence. Sure. In westernized societies, I think that, you wind up just having the need for speed, convenience, cheap, tasty, fire and forget kind of culture. I think that's what kind of has gotten us off the rails. Good news is that I think we're getting back on the rails. And the rails that we're getting back onto is getting back in touch with our own bodies, our own instincts, our own human instincts, and our search for satisfaction that aligns our love with food with our love for health.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about how that's changing. We were just talking after that I spent a lot of my time in Brazil, and to see the contrast of grocery stores here in the US from Brazil. Brazil is also, it can be very industrialized, but I just saw such a contrast of like the prepped meals sections that are here in the US. If I go to any of the Whole Foods or any grocery store, it's just full of meals that have already been prepared. Versus if I go to Brazil or Colombia, majority of it is still just kind of like raw food that you have to go out and cook in your own kitchen. And it's just such a contrast. And it made me really think about like how food and just the meals that we've had have evolved over history. One of the things I think about is like, where even did this idea of us needing to eat 3 meals a day come from? This idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is that something that our ancestors and the hunters and tribes, is there any science to that? Just as your experience as a food scientist, I'm just curious to know, is there any research-backed reasons why we should have 3 meals versus 6 or 1?
Yeah, well, there are lots of theories about how often you should eat. And if you take a look at some of the trends on fasting, intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, is 8 hours, 12 hours? What is the right, quote, right biohacked number for us? I would tell you that if we didn't live in a culture of abundance, where we would have to eat what we killed, kind of thing, or eat what we found, we would have to, we would still survive. We'd probably survive on 1 meal a day, 1 good meal a day. We'd be hungry. And there's nothing wrong with being hungry. I think that, what's really changed from the 1950s to present day is going from an age of moderation and maybe scarcity in many cases, to an age with greater wealth, greater abundance, greater convenience. And by the way, all of those things led to industrialization. Arguably, industrialization is one of the most useful things for humanity as a whole, because you can scale, right? So you're in a tech world. Everything is about, getting something going and then scaling it, right? Scaling for success. Well, that's what we did with food. And so sometimes you get to this point, and earlier before we got live, we were talking about how scaling, the success of scaling can actually eclipse itself and collapse everything you've tried to do.
Yeah, true.
Right. So many of these big institutions that have been so successful, when you get bigger and bigger, finally it kind of implodes. It can't handle its own weight. And I think, in a way, that's what we've come to with food as well. We've made food so ubiquitous, so cheap, so convenient, so engineered to be addictive, that we now are waking up, I think, as a society to say, wait a minute, what have we done here? We don't feel good doing this. It's cheap. It's our habit. Most of us have grown up in our childhood with convenient foods, fast foods, easy to eat meals. And then when you're in college, of course, everybody's making their ramen or whatever is fast and cheap for a college student. But I think that there's a return to basics that is happening in the world now. And when it comes to food and health, it's re-examining, should I be eating the most convenient, cheap, and addictive thing? And the answer, I can tell you as a scientist and as a doctor, is no, our body doesn't like it either.
Yeah, it's hard to, and we should definitely talk about how we're getting back into the basics. I think it's great conversations like this for people to be informative, that maybe they didn't learn in school. But I just remember even moving from Korea, where I would eat miso soup with rice and kimchi and some basic eggs, to moving to Canada, where there would just be cornflakes and Lucky Charms on my table for breakfast. And I just thought, for as long as I remember, that's what breakfast is. And maybe it's a great kind of segue to talk about the history of breakfast, even more modern breakfast, of where that comes from.
Yeah. Okay. So another big thing to unpack. I'm very interested in history, but I'm not a food or a meal historian, although it's something I'm very interested in. But I will tell you, I think that in a rural society, agrarian society, people got up in the morning to work, to grow things, and you got up early to make the most of daylight. You got up as early as you possibly could and worked until you got your work done or it got dark, right? And so it's true, our metabolism tells us we need energy to be able to do our physical labor, our activities. So this is part of that hardwiring I was alluding to earlier. Our food is our fuel in the same way that if you drive a car that uses gasoline, when you go to the pump, you put the nozzle into your fuel tank and you fill it up. That's the fuel for your car, the engine of your car. To run your car, to go from point A to point B, you need to fill up with fuel. petrol, gasoline, whatever you want to call it. Liters or gallons is how we think about it at the filling station. And you don't even think about the fuel until you start running low. Similarly, our body is hardwired so that the fuel we need for our engines of our body, which includes our health, actually comes from food. So we don't call them liters or gallons, we call them calories. So that loaded word of calories is actually a lot simpler than most people think, and it doesn't come with the emotional baggage. Basically, your food is your fuel. We don't call them gallons like in a gas station, we call them calories. You put calories in, you fill up the tank. Now you can actually go, and you don't need to think about food until you're running low on food, because our operating system will tell us when our fuel tank is low.
Yeah.
Just like when you're driving when you're driving around in your car, you don't even think about how much gas is in your tank until you glance at the fuel gauge and it's low. Now all you can do,
you're desperate.
all you can do is be obsessed by thinking like, where am I going to get my next thing? That's how our body works as well. All right. So in the morning for breakfast, I mean, if you know that you're going to need energy to be able to do your work, sure, let's have some breakfast. All right. And what are you going to eat? You're going to have fuel choices. Now you're talking about choices. What choices do we have? Well, now we actually have convenient, cheap choices that are the things that you learned when you were in Canada. It's sort of like the school or the early breakfast stuff, with the commercial cereals. But actually in many cultures, as you know from Asia, you have a bowl of soup or a bowl of noodles, or you have, it's simpler, it's different.
Yeah.
Every culture has their own thing. However, I would say most of the convenient foods that we and kids certainly associate with breakfast today. I mean, listen, I grew up with have a bowl of cereal. It's got some fun characters, colorful characters.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a prize inside.
Maybe there's a tiger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you watch cartoons and you see the cereal advertised. My mom, when I grew up, said, oh, you make sure you drink orange juice. Well, there was an orange industry council that really was pushing for that to be part of the message.
Yeah.
How important is orange juice every morning? Yeah. Not that important. It's a lot healthier to eat just a whole orange. By the way, here's a little nugget, a little hack that people might not realize. Orange juice, it's great. Like if you get fresh orange juice, it's great. It's got, if you want to get it with pulp, because the pulp has the fiber and you get all the other bioactives. Citrus juice has a lot of polyphenols. You get it with pulp, you get fiber. All right. And it tastes great. Like I could guzzle. I remember when I was a kid, I would guzzle many tall glasses of orange juice. However, the problem is that you're drinking a lot of sugar. Now, regular sugar in fruit is probably fine. Okay, in fact, I know it's fine because it has a lot of other things. But do you know how many oranges it takes to make one tall glass of orange juice?
Just to freshly do that?
Yeah.
5, 6?
Takes 8 oranges
8
on average to create one. Like,
one
you
juice.
ever just squeeze an orange, right? Like
Yeah.
about that much comes out of a half or
Right.
half of an orange. So you need 8 of them. If you look at the amount of sugar that's in 8 oranges, that's a huge amount of a big sugar load. Now, like I said, there's nothing wrong with sugar in fruit if you have it in the whole fruit, because I could give you, if we went out to breakfast and we had oranges, for example, citrus, you and I would probably eat 1 orange for breakfast.
Yeah.
We'd never eat 8 oranges.
Right.
And in 1 orange, you only get the sugar from 1 orange, but you get all the fiber. Now you get all the polyphenols as well, right? So that the hack is that actually eating a whole single fruit is much better than the tall glass of the same fruit in juice form.
Because the juice form also probably has less fiber for you to actually be able to ingest all of this sugar without it affecting your body.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a whole other conversation about the fiber and the sugar.
Yeah.
I will tell you that, like I always recommend if you're going to, I'm not against juice, but I'm saying that eat the whole fruit versus the juice is always going to be better for you. You're going to get juice, get it with the fiber, make it yourself. And if you have a juicer, there are systems within many juicers that will actually deliberately extract the fiber so you get the pure liquid, the liquid's filtered out. The fiber, the puck that comes out of these juicers, you want to use that. I mean, you can put it in your garden, but I mean, or your compost, but it's actually, you want the fibers is good stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Just, because I know there's a lot of people that advocate for not even drinking juice and everything. So it's a confusing world out there where someone is promoting this and they may be an influencer, and it's hard to know who to believe with this kind of stuff, right? Unless it's data backed.
That's why you want to believe your body. Okay. Your body will tell you what you should be doing. And I think that this is more and more important. Like I said, we live in an age of abundance, and it's not a new age. We've been living in an age of abundance since the 1950s. So look at 70 years of pretty much being able to be the kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, get whatever you want. It's all colorful around us. So really, I think that the other thing that's actually, I think, evolving in our society, modern society, one of the things that's evolving in our modern society is really, I think we're starting to enter into an age of accountability, self-accountability, right? So if you realize that my health is my business, I'm responsible for it. I don't have to wait for a doctor once a year to actually tell me what I should do, and then the other time I can do whatever I want. No, I actually am accountable to myself. And I think that's really where the awakening is in society now. Like, people are beginning to realize, hey, you know what? It's up to me. It's self-determination. I get to decide my fate. And by the way, you can see this really well in the longevity crowd. People like Brian Johnson, who takes things to like a very, very interesting extreme about self-testing. He wants to know what's going on. I don't have a problem with it. I can't do that myself. I wouldn't do it myself. But I think that, he and the longevity movement, Dave Asprey's of the world, they are asking the question, what are you doing for yourself, to yourself, and how do you know, right? And so I think that people who want to live long and live well are definitely looking inward. They're looking at the mirror. They're looking inwards. They're seeing how they feel. Not everybody has to be a biohacker I've used that term a couple of times. Not everyone has to biohack. You just have to actually be more in touch with yourself and your body. Yeah. And I think that's true regardless of what you're talking about. If you want to actually be in better balance, you need to be first true and in line, in tune with yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And you mentioned Brian Johnson, just the level of extremity that he takes. And I think for me personally, I think he's doing a great service to humanity, because I think it's always interesting to study the people that have gone the extremes, not to try to mirror them necessarily, but to try to extract some of the learnings that he's gone and sharing for free to the world. Yet it's so polarizing. Like, you have a band of people that love him, yet there's a bunch of haters also, maybe even a greater number of people that hate on him, and the people that are at those extremes. And it makes me think about, really, to me, it's kind of a reflection of how they feel about themselves. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, like, the balance of trying to live a healthy life where in many ways you're restricting yourself from eating sweets and all these things, yet also thinking about the long term of feeling good, living longer. How do you balance living a good life, living the life you want with freedom, while making sure you're taking care of yourself? Because I think that's the biggest reason of why people may be hating on folks like Brian Johnson or some other people that go to the extremes.
Well, listen, I love that question because, as a doctor, I see patients all the time. And many of the patients are not that healthy. You're talking about the typical American patient is overweight, might have smoked, depending on their age, at an earlier age, probably drank too much alcohol. And, you get people who are not in good shape. And my approach to working with those individuals on health, you can work on disease. Take a look at what their numbers are, write a prescription, send them to a specialist to do X, Y, or Z. That's bread and butter medicine. But if what I like to do is to work with people on their health. All right. And if you work with somebody who is overweight, smoking, or former smoker, drinks too much, and you approach them with judgment and say, you're a bad person by doing this, don't do it, don't do this, cut this out, cut that out. That type of messaging actually completely goes against the grain of human nature. Human nature abhors deprivation, restriction, limitation, elimination. Think about it. When we were kids, if your mom or your teacher told you, you can't do something, what do we think in our brain?
That's exactly what I want to do.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't even going to do it, but now that you mention it, now you got me thinking about it, right?
Yeah,
okay. So, and I think that that's really where I come into sort of counseling and advising people. I say, look, life is for the living, meaning that in two ways. You want to enjoy your life as you live, as you go forward. No matter however many years you want. Some people want a lot, some people don't care. All right. But whatever number of years, whatever the number is, however many birthday candles you want in your cake, all right, you want to actually enjoy your life. So enjoyment is a highly personal thing. All right. And this is where individualization matters. If you love to read books, then read more books. If you love to, if you are a bon vivant and you like to go out to, or a gastronome, and if you're a gastronome and you like to go out to eat, you should do it. All right. And I think the key thing for health as it relates to pursuing the passions that we all have, everyone has some passion. Even people say, like, I'm a boring person, I don't like anything. Wrong. If you really look, again, this is being in touch with yourself inside. If you look deeply inside, there'll be something that you resonate with for sure. If you actually take the time to figure out what you're passionate about, pursue them, but do it with moderation. I think that's the formula for balancing pleasure and health at the same time. Most people don't go wrong if they actually kind of stay within the lanes that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for someone like Brian Johnson, this is what he enjoys. Like, it's his own, for his perspective, he's not suffering in any way. This is like, he gives him energy, it gives him purpose. Like, you should just let him live his life, right? It's interesting how.
Well, I view people who are interested in exploring extremes to be pioneers of sorts. They're taking one for the team. They're helping us discover new things.
Yeah.
And it's up to them. I think it's they're making their own human contribution of sorts, as long as they're sharing it. So I don't hate on people like that. I actually think it's really cool that somebody is able to be the human experiment.
Yeah.
But I do, and I think that the important thing is to learn from that, not to try to emulate that.
Yeah, because it may just not fit within your lifestyle, your goals, your values. How do you think about that? Like, do you have desires to live to 120, 150, 180?
Look, my own personal view is longevity is it's a personal goal of mine, and I think I have some street cred for it as somebody who's really into prevention and into health and into using food as medicine. But my uncle also lived to 104. My great uncle lived to 104 years old. Independent, sharp. He had community support, but he made it all the way to beyond a centenarian. He almost got into super centenarian or super aging world. And by the way, here's an interesting question for you, Sean. When we were younger, right? Like, you always look at living to 100 to be this magic number, big goal.
Yeah.
Right? Forget about today's conversation. People are talking about living to 300 or whatever. But 100 has always seemed to be that glass ceiling for humans.
Yeah,
right?
3 digits. Yeah.
You know how many people are actually 100 years old, have made it to 100 and above, like living on Earth right now? Take a guess. Random guess. How many people have made it to 100?
In total? I don't know.
Not in total, but like not in history, but just like alive right now.
Like today that are alive? I have no idea.
Random guess.
20,000, 30,000?
700,000 people are alive today who are 100 or older.
God.
So it's not a rare thing.
Yeah.
I mean, in the context of 8 billion people, it's not that common.
Yeah.
But if you look at a trait of living to, if you look at an accomplishment of living to 100, not a trait. If you look at the actual achieving the goal of living to 100, it's not that rare. Okay. I mean, you're talking about 700,000 people. The good news is now we have science, we have research that is able to be applied to that huge number of people to take a look at what are we discovering about what makes it, what's the common denominator in people who make it to 100 or above. And we're actually beginning to find that out. Many of the commonalities that are being discovered of people who live to 100 and above are the ones that you might naturally expect. They've got a good immune systems, all right? Why is that important? Well, a good immune system allows you to ward off and dodge infections that would kill you. Now, before the 1930s, most people made it to 40, 50, maybe. That was considered old age because infections took you out when you were in your 20s or 30s or maybe even childhood, all right? So, although we do criticize somewhat appropriately the overuse of antibiotics, antibiotics are a revolution for health. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But for people who are living to 100, they got good immune systems. We now know immune system not only helps you defend against invaders from the outside, like bacteria and viruses, but we also know that a good, strong immune system helps protect you from invaders inside your body, like cancer cells. All right. So we're all forming cancers inside our bodies all the time. We are made of 40 trillion human cells. They're dividing all the time. Mutations occur just because you can't copy paste yourself without making a mistake. Every time your cell replicates itself, copies itself, it's called a mutation. Something abnormal occurs, and that little mutation can turn into a cancer. All right, here's another pop quiz for you.
Oh, no.
If I told you that our body's made of 40 trillion cells,
Yeah.
and every mistake that's made in copying and pasting the cell is a mutation, and every mutation can turn into a cancer. Do you know how many mistakes occur in our body? Every copy paste mistakes occur in our DNA every 24 hours.
Oh, boy. Can I use ChatGPT for this?
Just take a guess.
So we have 40 trillion cells. How many gene mutations do we have every day?
Yeah.
I don't know, 100,000?
It's actually 10,000 mistakes
Okay.
that are made every day. And the reason I'm actually pointing this out is that numbers matter, right? So when I tell you that 10,000 mistakes are made every day that are mutations at the DNA level, we have these 10,000 potential microscopic cancers that are forming in our body every day. How come we don't get cancer every day? How come more people don't get cancer, right? So the patient who is diagnosed with cancer always says, why me? As a researcher, I say, well, why don't more people get cancer? Right. And the answer lies in part because we've got a strong immune system. Our immune system is an army of super soldiers that are in our body that conduct surveillance, they patrol. When they find these abnormal microscopic cancers, they wipe them out. And that's why we don't get cancer more often. So in the super agers, the centenarians, the 700,000 people that have made it to 100 today, all right, they've got good, strong immune systems. They're protected from infection, all right, from the outside world. They're protected from cancer on the inside world. Hey, if you remove infection and cancer, you've removed some of the common causes of mortality, right? They also have good vascular health. Now, I'm a blood vessel researcher. I study angiogenesis. That's how the body grows blood vessels. So I know that there are ways food, diet, lifestyle can help your circulation become healthier. People who live to 100 and above have really good circulations. Their blood just flows along that 60,000 mile channel of highways and byways that deliver the oxygen that we breathe and the nutrients that we eat to every single cell in our body. You want to live to 100, you got to have good circulation. You got to actually have a good immune system. And then here's something really interesting being discovered in the centenarians and superagers. They've got good gut health. We all heard about gut health, right? The microbiome, the 39 trillion healthy bacteria, the ecosystem that lives in our gut that does a lot of things, gut brain, gut immune, gut circulation. Turns out that superagers have been discovered to actually have 4 specific bacteria that are at higher level in their poop, in their gut microbiome, than in people who don't make it that long. That's cool. We're beginning to biohack, these superagers to try to figure out what is it about them that separates their success, from everyone else. And to me, that's what's exciting about being alive today. That's what's exciting about wanting to balance longevity with a rich, enjoyable life, is that we can get some clues from the people who are doing these extreme biohacking, but there's also real bona fide research to figure out, how do we get a better circulation? That's what I study. How do we get better immunity? I also study that. How do we get better gut health? And that's really where this self-determination, accountability comes into play on how we make these decisions that, for food, whether you eat 3 times a day or 1 time a day, whether you fast or don't fast, this is all up to us. And that's why I think health is self-determined. It's a very important concept.
Yeah. And I think this is why you talked about gut health. I remember growing up, every little infection that I thought I had, my doctors would just prescribe antibiotics. And I would just take them because I, for lack of information, didn't realize what it was actually doing in terms of killing the gut health, the good gut health.
And you were a kid.
And I was a kid, yeah. And, I don't want to blame my parents for it or anything like that, but it's just the information that we have today is just so vast, but it's really up to the people that you mentioned to gain information, like on this podcast, and to actually take accountability for it. Talk to me about vascular health and immune system. What are some of the things that people can eat, people can do to actually improve those things today?
Well, Mother Nature is really smart. When she created foods, all right, fruits, like let's talk about whole foods, plant-based foods for a second. All right, when she created fruits and vegetables, nuts and legumes, all right, spices and herbs, healthy oils, I can tell you that the polyphenols that are present. Now, most people have heard of what a polyphenol is. It's a chemical that we call bioactive because it's found in food, and when you eat it, it actually activates processes in your body, right? So listen, in the conversation about food, we started this out. So much of the messaging about food has been negative, and so much of the effort has been looking at the bad things about food and the bad guys who are making bad foods to make us bad people, right? I mean, it's a very negative kind of narrative that's developed. But what I do is I look at what are the good things that are in foods and what are the things that more aware people can enjoy by eating those types of foods. Most of them now, by the way, come from whole plant-based foods. So and you talked about growing up in Korea. I spent a gap year in the Mediterranean. My background is Chinese. I spent some time in China as well. I mean, listen, most people in these healthier cultures, they eat whole plant-based foods as part of their staple. And by the way, when you cook vegetables, you take this huge pile of vegetables and you cook them down or ferment them down, and you can turn it into a little pile of vegetables that you can actually eat, but you're getting the benefit of the whole big stack. Only in America is the idea of eating raw vegetables as the primary. How much salad can you eat? Well, probably not that much, because you could fill up a bowl with a lot of lettuce, that probably more than you'd want to eat. How much kimchi could you eat? Well, that's a lot of vegetables kind of fermented down into a little forkful or chopstickful, right? So again, I think that culture tells us a lot about it. But as it relates to vascular health, and immune health, the way that Mother Nature has arranged many of these bioactives, the polyphenols, they will actually have multiple job descriptions. So the same polyphenol that's good for immunity could be good for vascular health, blood vessel health. Give you an example. Blueberries, all right? Blueberries are these little tiny potent health bombs in a positive way. They contain anthocyanins, all right? Anthocyanins are one of the bioactives, one of the polyphenols. And you know what they do when you eat a blueberry? Anthocyanins are absorbed into your bloodstream through your stomach. They support your immune system. And support is kind of a weak word to me as a scientist. They can elevate your T cells, your natural killer cells. These are the members of the super soldier squad, our immune system, that really help us defend against cancer, defend against infection. And this has been studied in humans, and just eating blueberries can be very, very healthy for your immune system. How many blueberries do you need? Okay, this is another thing that I study, which is food doses. All right,
Right. That's really important.
if
Yeah.
food is medicine, and every medicine has a dose, what's a dose of food? I used to always get really frustrated by the fact that the kale frond wavers would just say, "Well, just eat some more kale." Well, how much kale should I be eating? Blueberries. How many blueberries do you need to eat, or how much should you eat in order to get immune benefit? Well, it's about a measuring cup of blueberries a day
Okay.
will actually amplify your immune system about 30% higher than before you ate blueberries. Okay.
That's a lot. 30%.
That's a lot. Yeah, exactly. 30%. And a cup is not a lot of blueberries. So here's the other thing for the people who believe that when it comes to health and food, the extremes are always the best. A cup of blueberries, I could easily eat a couple blueberries for breakfast. I could snack on a cup of blueberries, and if you dried your blueberries, you can carry them around and just snack them all day long. And by the way, the blueberries also contain, like dried blueberries, will contain fiber, like good fiber. You can have more snacking on the fiber all day, like dried cranberries as well.
So they're healthier even for you than just normal regular blueberries, you're saying?
Not necessarily. It's just that they're more convenient, right? So I want to come back to kind of how we've evolved as a culture. We want convenience,
Yes.
right? Do I really want to be washing my blueberries every single day? By the way, to wash, here's another little health hack.
Yeah.
When you get fresh fruit, you do want to wash them. I don't care if the package says triple wash, double wash. It is true when they triple wash. I recently went to a farm that packages foods for chefs, and I said, "Show me the triple washing," and I'll be darned. They actually showed me like 3 flumes with fast running water where they were actually washing it 3 times.
Wow.
First one took off a lot of dirt. Second one was a lot cleaner. Third one was crystal clean before it went into the packaging step. And I was very, very impressed. So, I had to suspend my disbelief because I was a skeptic about that.
Right.
But I always tell everybody, when you get it home, the food, especially if you go to a farmer's market to get it, you definitely should be washing your food. The little hack to wash your food safely is to run it under cold running water for 60 seconds.
Okay. 60
All right.
seconds.
60 seconds. 1 minute of washing your food in cold running water. That'll get that'll get it clean. And you should wash. So blueberries, that's what you want to wash. But I don't know. If I might want to do something good for my immune system, I might feel like a blueberry in the middle of the day. If I'm at work, traveling, I don't have time to wash blueberries. That's where dried come in. So again, I'm always looking for the simple way to be able to get the same benefits. Now, the anthocyanins in blueberries is good for the immune system, great for your circulation. So I mentioned that each of our bodies contains 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels, the highways and byways of health. All right. When your blood vessels are healthy, you can be healthy. When your blood vessels are sick, there's no way you don't stand a chance of actually being healthy. So that's why I study blood vessels. It's a common denominator of both health and disease.
Yeah.
Right. So vascular health becomes really important. Anthocyanins, the bioactive, the polyphenol found in blueberries, fantastic for vascular health. Now, what does vascular health mean? Well, actually, if you take a look at a blood vessel as a tube, the lining of that tube is called an endothelial lining. It's kind of like a lining of saran wrap, really slippery saran wrap. So anything in your blood that's in your blood vessel will actually flow smoothly to get to wherever it's going. If you have problems in that lining, endothelial problems, vascular problems, then guess what? Things floating in your blood will stick to it. All right. It's kind of like a sidewalk that's got a lot of holes in it. You're going to trip because your shoe's going to get caught in it.
Right.
And boom, you're going to actually trip over it. Okay. So that's why you don't want to actually have potholes in your circulation. You want it to be well paved, very smooth, like ice. So I'm going to give you another analogy. So you said you spent time in Canada. So hockey is big in Canada. Right. So, for anybody who is listening or watching and you're not a hockey fan, basically ice skating rink, the ice has to be perfectly smooth. After you get a bunch of skaters on there, the skates chop up the ice, and so the ice isn't smooth anymore. So you got to bring a truck out called a Zamboni that drives on the ice. You've probably seen this growing up.
Yep.
And basically it heats the ice and it's got a polisher, and it'll take rough ice and make it perfectly smooth. That's what blueberries and anthocyanins can do. It can polish the ice, polish the lining of your blood vessels so that any potholes become smooth again. Right? So not just blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries could also do
All
it.
the berries.
All the berries can actually help both immune health as well as vascular health. But that's not all. I mean, beyond berries, mangoes can be helpful in that way as well. Obviously, the leafy greens also have polyphenols. And, without going into a whole litany of things, if you name a food, I could probably tell you what the bioactive is that's been studied by research and what health defense mechanism. Is it your circulation? Is it your gut health? Is it your immunity? Is it your DNA? Is it your stem cells? The whole other thing about longevity people are talking about is like, how do you activate your own stem cells for longer longevity? Well, foods can trigger your longevity by helping to trigger your stem cells as well.
What's the stem cell correlation with something like longevity? Because I guess people talk about stem cell therapy often when they have an injury. Like I know a lot of professional athletes get that when they have some sort of knee injury or neck injury, they get stem cell therapy and then it's healed. This is this magical thing that heals it. But I guess I've never really heard anyone talk about the longevity aspect of what stem cells contribute to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you, because I've worked in the biotech space through my nonprofit, the Angiogenesis Foundation. We've been involved for the last 30 years with programs that involve stem cells. All right. I can tell you for the most part, the the available stem cells that athletes can get are not really ready for prime time. Sure, they work in some cases, but we don't really understand that. The pharmaceutical FDA-approved version is still on the horizon. We haven't gotten to it yet. I can tell you, I mean, when it does work, it's amazing. You could take people with like end-stage heart disease, and you can actually, get them back to be active again. It's absolutely jaw-dropping what I've seen in clinical trials of stem cells, but none of them have actually been uniformly successful enough yet for an FDA approval in the United States. So I'm just prefacing that by saying the stuff that you go to the strip mall because you have tennis elbow to get an injection in your shoulder or your elbow. I don't recommend that. I know some people do. I don't, because I know the future is going to hold a really amazing breakthrough in that space. However, our body actually has its own stem cells. So when we're born, basically all of our bodies are made out of stem cells. When your dad's sperm met your mom's egg and you were just a ball of cells, all right, you had no face, you had no ears, you had no big toe, you had no liver, heart, kidney, spleen, all right, no brain. It was, you were just a ball of cells. Well, all those organs that became the future you and me actually were formed by stem cells. Our stem cells are called stem because they can become anything. Let me become Sean's brain. Let me become, your big toe. That's what a stem cell does. And over the course of 9 months, those stem cells when you were in your mom's womb did the job to create the little future you. And when you were born, there were extra stem cells left over that got stored away, like packed away for future use. How many of those stem cells are left when you were born? 70 million. On average, when we're born, right? When the baby comes out of mom, takes his first breath, all right, the umbilical cord gets cut. That's it. No more stem cells. So any stem cell, because the stem cells are actually coming back and forth through the umbilical cord.
Right.
You've heard of umbilical stem cells, right? Okay, they can be collected. So the umbilical cord is packed with stem cells. You can milk them out and save them. Which actually is an interesting thing. I did it myself. I think that I've actually, as a medical student, I've actually learned how to actually do that.
Wow.
So you can watch the stem cells coming out. But I can tell you that when babies are born, those 70 million stem cells are packed away like shirts in a box on the shelf, waiting for future use. And foods can activate those stem cells, right? So what are some of the foods that can activate the stem cells? Well, nobody gets angry when I tell them that dark chocolate can actually do it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Turns out that the flavonols, the polyphenols that are in cacao is a plant-based food.
Yeah.
Dark chocolate has more cacao. Now, chocolate as a candy is a confection, but the dark chocolate has more of the plant-based stuff in it, more of the polyphenols, more of the proanthocyanidins, and those bioactives stimulate those stem cells that are packed away to come out in your bloodstream to start healing. So that's the amazing thing, is that we can eat foods to actually get more stem cells to do their job. Now, how does this relate to longevity? Well, at the NIH, the National Institute of Health in the US, there was an effort to legitimize the study of longevity and aging. Because this field, although the quest for longevity has been going on for decades. I mean, thousands. Sorry. The quest for longevity has been going on for millennia. It's really only in the last 30 years or so that we've actually been able to take a real deep scientific dive into longevity.
Why is that? Is that just technology? Like
with biotechnology and with biohacking, with devices, wearables, with gene research, microbiome research. And I can tell you that the real clues to how to live longer and better come from looking at the opposite. And that is identifying what happens when we age that we might want to counter, right? So there's something called the hallmarks of aging that have been discovered. And these are, the 10 or 12, arguable, there's more coming down the pike. These are the things that happen to our body biologically as we age. And one of those things is the deficiency of stem cells. Our stem cells get depleted. So remember I told you we got 70 million stem cells. Well, when you're out of bullets, you're out of bullets.
You don't make more. That's what you have. And that's just...
Well, you can make more.
Oh. Okay.
And that's a key thing. So, but if you don't actually... You can actually help to cultivate more stem cells by exercise, lowering stress, by sleep. All the things that we know are better for our health. And food is actually one of those things as well. We can nurture more stem cells by actually eating the right way, moving the right way with exercise, sleeping the right way in terms of having good quality deep sleep. So all these things contribute to our ability to regenerate from the inside out. It's because you use the word healing, which is precisely what stem cells do. They repair, they replace, they regenerate. And that's really, really critical if you want to actually live long, because our bodies need to get replaced.
Gotcha. Fascinating. Okay, so we talked about blueberries as a superfood. We talked about, which people are going to love, dark chocolates. Talk to me just about organic food in general. I think this is obviously becoming a great trend now. More people are seeking out organic food, more is being available. But I think some people are still confused about what organic food really means, depending on the different categories as well, and what foods we should part. So maybe we can define, what is organic food? How do you define that?
Okay, there's a lot of different ways to look at organics versus conventionally grown. Let's talk about it at the level, let's talk about it in a way that's practical, that matters. Go to the grocery store, you often have two choices. You can buy the regular, we call it conventionally grown products, food products, or you can get the organic version, which is going to be more expensive, all right? And I can tell you, when organics came out, maybe 15 years ago.
That's it?
20 years ago, yeah. Not that long ago. Like when they really started to make waves and start to populate our grocery stores.
Yeah.
I was really rankled. It pissed me off because, sure, the food looked better, like it was more beautiful, but you want me to pay more money to buy something with less pesticide,
right?
Which is accurate, which is how we think about organic foods, grown without pesticides, more in a natural way, okay, compared to conventional, which is like sprayed with, you name the pesticide that people talk about, and and malign right now. Yeah, I don't want more pesticides, but why should I be paying more money to get less of a bad thing that I didn't want to begin with?
Yeah.
That's what pissed me off. Well, I changed my mind completely about organic. Okay, I used to be anti-organic. Now I'm pro-organic. You know why? Because about 6 years ago, I was at a small meeting with botanists. These are people that study plants, flowers, fruits, vegetables. And they taught me something. They opened my eyes to something I didn't realize. But these polyphenols that we've been talking about, we talked about blueberries. Let's talk about strawberries. Strawberries have a polyphenol called ellagic acid. Ellagic acid is what makes strawberries tart. Great strawberry, right? It's sweet and tart, right? So the ellagic acid makes the strawberry tart. Ellagic acid is a polyphenol. It helps your immune system, helps vascular health. So two of the things we talked about. So if I'm going to have a strawberry, I'd love to have a strawberry with more ellagic acid. All right. Now, so I talked to this botanist who studied strawberries, and I said, help me understand, like, why strawberries produce ellagic acid. And she said, oh, well, it's a defense mechanism of the plant. Because strawberries, like other food-bearing plants, right, live naturally in the wild, right? They grow in the fields, in the woods, or wherever. And when you grow naturally, what are you going to have? You're going to have little flying things, little bugs landing on the plant, nibbling on the leaves and the stems, all right? And the plant considers that an injury, and the plant will need to heal itself. So to heal itself, the plant makes polyphenols, like ellagic acid in strawberries, to heal itself. Now, when we pick that strawberry and we eat it, the ellagic acid also heals our body, but it was originally a plant healing thing. So this is what I learned from the botanists. They said, so think about it. If you grow in a more natural way with natural environment with insects nibbling, the plants aren't going to look as pretty, but they're going to have more polyphenols because they need to heal themselves more. Now, compare that to a strawberry plant growing in a way where you're treating with pesticides. Man, those fields look good. There's hardly any bugs at all. Leaves are perfect. Stems are perfect. No nibbling. Guess what? That strawberry doesn't need to make as many healing substances, so the polyphenols are lower.
Yes.
All of a sudden, this light bulb went off in my head, and I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me that organically grown food are going to have more polyphenols? And the answer was yes. True for strawberries, true for coffee, true for almost any food that we've studied, looking at organic versus non-organic. It's got more polyphenols in it. In fact, for coffee, there's a polyphenol called chlorogenic acid. 3 times more chlorogenic acid in organically grown coffee.
3 times?
Compared to conventionally grown coffee. 3 times. All right. By the way, it's the same number of 3 times for strawberries for ellagic acid as well. Now, this is why I changed my mind about organics. I am more than happy to pay a little bit more to get 3 times more of the good stuff that's going to be good for my health. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's going to taste better as well. So I think the practical aspect that I want to share with people listening to this is that organics, our knowledge about plants is evolving. We now realize that when plants are grown in a more naturalistic environment, which is also, by the way, what's happening with regenerative farming, right? Rather than big factories, big spraying pesticides and, like really brutalizing the soil. If you really do what we're supposed to do, go back to basics, treat the soil, treat the land well, and the land will treat you back well. Grow good plants in a more natural setting. They're going to need to heal themselves. They're going to actually have more polyphenols. That's why I actually think eating organic foods, if you can afford them, and by the way, organic's also getting cheaper now.
Thankfully.
That's really great. You're going to get more polyphenols. And some people say, well, what if I can't find organic foods all year round, or I live in a climate that gets really cold, there's no berries, and guess what? Frozen organic, also good, because when people make frozen foods, they're picking at the peak of ripeness, all right, and they flash freeze it, so you're trapping all the polyphenols. So you want a cheap year-round alternative, just go for the frozen organic version.
Got it. I think you're also a great person to talk to about this, which is there's organic everything. So someone that wants to eat organic, it is more expensive, right? So for someone that is on more of a budget, it's probably hard to get organic everything for most people. So what are the foods that we should prioritize eating organic versus the ones that are okay if you don't have to get organic?
Yeah.
Like I think bananas I've heard because of the fact that there's a layer on top, you don't have to go organic. So what are some of these other ones that are okay?
Right. Well, so, you just stated bananas have a peel that protects it from pesticides. So what we're talking about is, I'm not talking about the harm that you want to dodge. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, don't want the pesticides, but think about the bioactives that are
true.
inside. You want more good stuff.
The good stuff.
That's inside the peel.
That's true.
All right.
Yeah.
So I want less bad stuff and more good stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what makes organic a good choice. First of all, I think frozen organic tends to be pretty cheaper.
Yeah.
Not the cheapest, but it's less expensive. So that tends to be more affordable and more accessible. So I encourage anybody who wants to sort of just up their game when it comes to health, look for organic frozen foods. Oh, what can you do? Well, make a smoothie, and that's fine. But it's a good question. If you don't want everything organic, like what should you prioritize when you're looking for organics? I would say anything that's got really colorful, that's very colorful, because those are the colorful foods that are going to actually have more polyphenols. If you look at bell peppers, if you look at berries, if you look at fruits, they're bright, they're varying colors. They're when they say eat the rainbow, those rainbow colors are coming from polyphenols. So if you look at those colorful foods, the bright, brilliant colors, like the kaleidoscopic colors, those are the foods that if you get organic, you're going to get more of the polyphenols that are resulting in the color. There's another exception, and that is thin-skinned fruits. All right. For example, strawberries, you're not going to be skinning a strawberry to get rid of its pesticide. All right. That's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
You could wash blueberries pretty well. You could wash a strawberry pretty well, I suppose. But I think, fruits with thin skins, it's better to get organic. There's a study that was done by the University of Massachusetts, Worcester, looking at the penetration of pesticides. Now, earlier we were just talking about the good stuff in foods.
Sure.
Right? So an organic apple is going to have more chlorogenic acid, the same stuff that's in coffee. Lower inflammation, good for your immune system, good for vascular health. Apple a day keeps the doctor away. Actually, true, so apple's good stuff, but the apple's got a peel. Now, when we were kids, our moms probably peeled the apple for us.
Yeah.
But we now know that if you eat the peel of the apple, you get a lot of dietary fiber. It's great to feed your gut microbiome, lowers inflammation in your body. So apple peels are actually really good. Now, the study from UMass Worcester actually looked at spraying conventional pesticides onto apples and found that about 20% of the thickness of the skin was penetrated by the pesticides, and you couldn't wash it off.
Oh, wow.
All right. So that's an example, I would say, an apple or strawberry, where, if it's treated with pesticides, it's going to soak into the skin and you can't peel it off. Or apple, I guess you could peel it, but you should eat the skin.
Yeah.
If you can. You get an organic apple, you're actually going to get, it will be free of the chemical pesticides.
Gotcha. Now, what about like eggs or meat, like more or dairy even? Like, talk to me about those, the importance of eating organic versus just eating regular ones. Like, what's the difference?
You know
there?
what? Like, I try not to get too obsessed or too extreme about things. It could drive me crazy.
I know.
And by the way, every one of those foods you just mentioned, the eggs, the meat, or whatever, like, there's strong feelings about all of those types of foods that kind of create tribal camps.
Yes.
Either you're for eggs or against eggs, or you're for meat or against meat. I don't play that game because I think that, first of all, I'm an omnivore. I'm not a vegan. I eat mostly plant-based foods, but I enjoy food. Actually, I enjoy the taste of food. I don't eat too much, but I enjoy diverse foods. And I think that when you talk about animal products, organic is, nobody's spraying a chicken with pesticides, but it means that they're fed with grain that are actually that's been done in an organic way, which is probably better. You know, the chicken isn't being fed things that might be laced with chemicals. Yeah, sure. I'd rather have a chicken fed with organic food for sure.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I think if you keep it really simple that way, but by the way, organic's a label, a sticker that it's put on. The companies, the farms have to pay for that sticker.
Okay.
All right. And so a lot of people still grow things organically, naturally,
Oh, but
without
it may
having to
not
pay
be
for the
labeled.
sticker.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so I think what I say is that, you know, if you're listening to this and you want to get the best quality food, go online and search for a farmer's market near your zip code. All right. If you're from out of the country, you can probably find a farmer's market pretty easily. It's probably got one every week somewhere near you. And talk to the people who are selling the goods. They'll tell you how they grow it. You know, they're growing it. They're proud of their foods. And, you know, that's a great place to actually go buy local, seasonal, fresh, and in general, healthy grown foods. Many of those small farmers, small scale farms, they're not going to be paying extra money for that organic sticker, but they'll be growing it in an organic style. Good enough.
Yeah.
And they're not going to pass on the cost of that sticker to you. So another affordable way. I want to make healthy eating seem easy and accessible. You don't have to stress out about it, right? So, but you know, you want to bring up some things about like eggs or meat or fish. You know what? I think let's tackle each of those briefly. Eggs actually turn out to be pretty healthy for you. All right, healthy for brain health, good for brain health. It's got choline, which your brain needs, especially as we age. It's got lutein and zeaxanthin, which are these bioactives that are in the egg yolk. That's good for our eye health, good for vision health. You want to live a long time. You want to have good vision. Like, it would suck to be very old and blind, right? Then you can't enjoy the world around you. And so eggs turn out to be, in moderation, turn out to be good for brain, good for eye health. All right. But now this is where you want to ask about the quality of the eggs. The egg comes out of a hen, all right, chicken, and it's a mom. The eggs are like the unfertilized egg is comes from the mom. Just like in humans, if the mother is healthy, prenatal care, the baby's going to be healthier, which is why we tell moms to take care of themselves when they're pregnant, right? You got a sick mom, think about a crack mother, okay? A woman, a crack addict who's pregnant. You think that baby's going to come out healthy? No, not, unfortunately, okay? It's a tragedy. And the same thing is that, like, we want our chickens that are laying the eggs to be as healthy as possible. That's another reason to look for eggs that are coming from farms that raise their hens in humane ways and allow them to eat free range. So these aren't just marketing things. They're common sense things, actually. Yeah. By the way, an egg that is a healthy, how do you know it's a healthy egg? When you crack it open, that yolk should not be bright yellow like the sun. I remember when I was a kid, I mean, we all grew up with moms that, you know, just did whatever moms did back in the convenience days, you know, and it was just like, I think our parents' generation just grew up in a different world. I remember I was in grade school and the art teacher said, okay, here's some crayons, draw an egg. And I took out a bright yellow crayon and I drew the egg yolk like the sun.
Like a sun, yeah.
Right? Man, was that wrong. Because a good, healthy egg is orange red. It's almost like a blood moon. And the reason is the healthy mom, the healthy hen, is going to be eating carotenoids from the little seeds and eating natural plants and eating bugs. They're going to get all kinds of great nutrition, micronutrients that the healthy hen is going to pass into the egg. And a good, healthy egg should be orange or orange red. And that's how you can tell. And so if you really want the lutein for your eyes to make good vision, and you want the choline that's good for your brain health. I mean, again, these are little biohacker kind of things, right? People who are longevity, they're paying attention to the wearable. They're paying attention to the implantable glucose monitor. Cool, great. Measure yourself if you like. All right. They're not paying enough attention to the details on their food. And that's really what I work on. It's like, if you want to live long and live well, what can you do to fine tune your health? Because, every bit as much as a wearable. You got to eat multiple times a day to get enough energy, according to your body's operating system, to be able to move. Every time you fill up at the gas station, you get the choice, right? Think about it. You want the lowest quality, cheapest gas, you want the middle version, or you want the best possible fuel? Well, if you're the kind of person that who cares about your car and your car engine, you want to drive your car for as long as possible and keep it in good shape, you're going to be choosing the more expensive gas and putting that high quality fuel into it. Sure, you're going to be paying a little bit more money, but you got to be aware of it. But I can tell you that people who are filling up their cars from beginning to end with crappy, shitty gas, their cars are not going to last as long as the people who are choosing the high quality, high octane fuel to take care of their engine. Same thing when it comes to food choices on longevity.
Yeah, and the difference is that, unlike a car where you can buy multiple times in your lifetime, you only get
one, we get one chassis.
Which is one chance, right? Speaking of kind of these like controversial things, I have a video actually that I want to just show you, which is, I want to get your thoughts on this because there's a lot of confusing advice out there, and this is one of them.
What are the most sought after foods by humans? It's not vegetables. You go to visit the Hadza. So I went to Tanzania a few years ago. They don't really celebrate vegetables. I did not see them eat a single vegetable. I went digging tubers with the women, but the guys that were there with me, the Hadza men, were like, we don't want that stuff. We want to eat honey. If we find some berries, we'll eat it. And really, we want to go hunt for animals and eat them from nose to tail with all their organs. They crave either sweet foods or animal foods. So they don't really celebrate vegetables. They might eat, quote, vegetables, things like leaves, stems, roots, and seeds. If they're starving, they're very low on the totem pole, and that makes sense.
So this is Paul Saladino, but he's not the only one that talks about this idea of how our ancestors used to grow up without eating meat, without eating vegetables, and how they relied on mostly meat, just fruits, and stuff like honey. It's kind of confusing, right? Because we've been told. I mean, I think there's a lot of research out there that vegetables are good for you, like it's just plain and simple. What are your thoughts when you hear something like this?
Well, I generally don't listen to or follow people that are what I call, sort of selective narration. Most of the health and wellness influencers, they're not historians, they're not anthropologists. They have an idea that they want to sell to the public, and then they use confirmation bias to go look for video that backs what they are, and then they use they edit together a storyline that isn't really quite accurate. First of all, and I can come at this, and I'm not an anthropologist as well, so I'm an honest scientist. So an honest scientist will tell you when they don't know something, or when they're not sure about something, or where their limits are. All right, so I'd be willing to bet that the person that you just showed isn't an anthropologist by training. I might be wrong, but I doubt it is. And I would also say that, if you go back and look at the various branch points of humans, because there were like 6 different species of humans that once walked the earth, so, in some cases at the same time. So imagine if like today, it's just us Homo sapiens, but imagine there were other like Hobbit-like people running around, humans running around. So I do think that if you look at tooth structure, human teeth, and going all the way back, looking at fossil teeth, they were adapted to eat plant matter, as well as, and we have incisors, we've had fangs, all right, but we clearly weren't wolves, so I don't know, I think that you have to go back. I think anybody who's listening to this and says, well, what does Dr. Lee think? You know what? It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what history really tells us. Go and look on the internet and look for, ancient humans, and look for dietary patterns, and you'll find out from scholarly articles that humans were omnivores. I think we were opportunistic, which means that if we could find it and it wasn't going to poison us, we'd probably eat it. And food was not always abundant. Like, you can't go to the Costco to go get, a big score. You get anything you want. You get a lawnmower, or you could get a bowl of cereal, or a case of cereal. No, I mean, I think people, we had to go work for our food. We had to grow it. We had to work for it. We had to take care of it. We probably took care of our land a little bit better. And yeah, sweet things, nothing wrong with sweet things. Fruit's sweet, good for you. Honey is sweet. Hey, it's a natural sweetener, right? Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that it's a true statement that humans were primarily carnivores. I just don't think that was a realistic scenario for us. Sure, today you can go to the grocery store, you can choose to become a vegan or a carnivore.
Yeah.
But that wasn't possible 10,000 years ago.
So, because what are your thoughts on this trend of restrictive diets that have kind of come about? There are carnivores, there are obviously vegetarians.
Yeah.
There are people that, keto even, I would say it's somewhat of a restrictive diet. Based on the fact that we were omnivores, like, is a restrictive diet something like that over the long haul something that you would recommend? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, restrictive diets almost never work.
Yeah.
All right. And healthy diets are things that are sustainable, that you can carry with you for your whole life. And again, if you look at those blue zones that Dan Buettner talks about, the places in the world, the 5 places in the world where people live longer on average and have better health spans than anywhere else.
Yeah.
They are not on restrictive diets. They are not on any extreme. Here's the one thing that is actually true. If you look at the healthiest people, those centenarians, all of them eat modestly. They don't gorge. They don't go into any extreme. And by the way, those centenarians, those 700,000 people today, they're also not biohackers. They don't have implantable glucose sensors in their skin either. Nothing wrong with all that stuff, but I'm saying that you can achieve long-term health without being obsessed and without going to extremes. So, but what do I think about people who choose to go on a restrictive or extreme diet? Hey, listen, again, back to that self-determinism. If you want to try something extreme, go all carnivore, go all vegan, go all keto. It will definitely, it's an experiment. You become, like a little micro Brian Johnson. It's going to do something to you for sure. All right. Ketones are going to change the way your brain works. It's going to reset your gut microbiome for sure. You go carnivore and you eliminate plants. Oh yeah, it'll shift your microbiome. It'll shift your body. It'll allow you to you'll have a lot more amino acids. You go only vegan. Actually you're going to be lowering inflammation for sure. A lot of polyphenols coming out of that. It will change you. The question is it something that you can sustain for a long period of time? Probably of all the extreme diets, being vegetarian or mostly plant-based is the healthiest, probably, of all the kind of like the dietary extremes. Being vegetarian or vegan is actually the most sustainable of all of them. And it's going to be overall the healthiest because of all those polyphenols that you're taking in. Do I recommend an all carnivore diet? Nah, I'm telling you, I've done enough research to know how important it is to have plant-based foods. That gut health, if there's one thing that you could do, like let's say that you feel like, listen, I only have 3 cards to play. Let's say I only have 1 card to play. And I've got 3 different I've got 3 different ways to actually eat. I could be keto, I could be carnivore, I could be plant-based. I would say, hands down, go plant-based. Why? Because the one system in your body that is very clearly the single most important health defense, from what we're learning, is your gut health. And plants nurture your gut health. Everything else can actually influence it, but not necessarily in good ways.
This is assuming, I guess, that you know how to do veganism or vegetarian in a way where you can get enough proteins, because I guess some people that do shift to that may not be aware of how to get enough proteins and some of the vitamins that you can get or nutrients from. Like,
it's called Google, it's called YouTube. Just search it, and there's no excuse today not to be able to figure that out. And by the way, I'm not encouraging people to be vegans or vegetarians. Like I said, I'm an omnivore. I eat fish, I'll eat some meat, I'll eat dairy, but not a lot of it, and I'll eat way more plants. All right, and that's my preference. And I think that everyone needs to find out what brings them joy. What do they enjoy doing when it comes to food? What are your preferences? And so when people that get overwhelmed by that stuff, are like, oh, Dr. Lee now says this. I don't know. It's like, who do I listen to? Here's what I say: listen to yourself. Most of us don't take the time to do self-knowledge, to try to look for self-knowledge. If you do that, you start there, you'll discover a lot of things that were hidden in plain sight. So all of us grew up with some smell coming out of our mom's kitchen, something that brings us home, something that makes us feel comfortable, right? What is that for you? What was that smell that came out of your mom's kitchen? Think about that as a grounding exercise, and then wonder what's in that. What was in that food that actually made it? If it was a chili, well, maybe it's the meat, but it's also the spices of chili. Oh, the spices are pretty good for you. Maybe it's tomato of chili. Maybe that's a flavor that makes your mouth water when you think about it. All right. Well, that's tomato. Guess what? Tomato is actually healthy for you. And the spices used in chili are actually really healthy for you. Oh, you mean something that I actually like that brings me back to home, like brings me back to my parents, my recollection, actually could be good for you? Absolutely. And again, I encourage people to start that way. Like, go back and build yourself forward. Don't try to just strike out with a spear blindly, not knowing who to listen to on social media. That's ridiculous. You'll never get anywhere. You'll be more confused. Follow your own instincts. Think about what you really like to eat. And whatever you do, don't eat too much of anything, even healthy food. You can also remember, food is calories. Calories are fuel. Food is fuel. Fuel is calories. All right. So even healthy food has calories in it. You don't want to eat too many of those because you overload your system. By the way, I want to make a double underscore on this, because this analogy that I brought up about food being fuel, like we need fuel, gasoline or petrol for our cars that we fill up. Guess what? What happens when you overfill the tank in your car, right? So the tank's only so big. If you didn't have the clicker that stopped the fuel coming out of the tank, guess what would happen? You'd go to the top, the fuel, the gas would come out of the car. It would actually flow down the side of the car, around the tires, pool around your feet. And guess what? You'd be standing in the middle of a toxic, flammable, dangerous mess.
It's a great analogy.
People would freak out around you. Oh my God, what's going on there, right? Same deal with our food. If we overflow our tank, we'll wind up being not around our pool around our feet, but it'll be inside our body, which is even worse. We will actually have a milieu, a sea of toxic, flammable substances in our body that will overwhelm our metabolism. So if you think about this analogy of food being fuel being just like the gas we put in our car, and try to be sensible about filling our tank when we need to. And you don't have to be obsessed with filling your tank all the time. Some people drive close to empty and still get around. All right. But as long as you do that, I think you're going to be fine. Health, the idea of food and health is a lot simpler than people make it out to be. Leave it to people like me who are the scientists to get into the nitty gritty, the ellagic acid, the chlorogenic acid, all the T cells, the natural killer cells, like endothelial cells. I'll deal with that stuff. But I think that for people who are listening, we talked about some things already, like organic, probably better because it's got more polyphenols and less harmful stuff if you can get it. And if it's expensive, you want to budget it, go for the colorful foods. And if you are if you don't have fresh foods, the frozen ones are actually good choices as well. If you're looking at animal products, just remember the healthy mom is going to have the healthy baby when it comes to things like eggs, and if you're trying to figure out about extremes, there are no extremes. Like our body's designed for preferring certain things on an individual level that you can find healthy things within whatever you eat. Like in my first book, Eat to Beat Disease, that's what I emphasized. I created tables and charts of more than 200 different foods. And I always tell people when they're trying to figure out, like, okay, so doctor, just tell me what to eat. Tell me what to eat. I said, you know what? If you have my book, do you have my book? Like, yeah. Okay. I want you to get a Sharpie or a highlighter or just a pencil and go to these tables and just circle all the foods that I've already done all the heavy lifting for you. Circle the ones that you like. There's 200 of them. I can't believe you can't find any of them. If you found the foods that you like and start with those, you can already know. You don't need to read anymore. You don't need any more science. You don't need any more YouTube. Just start with those foods, and you're already way ahead of the game. And you can discover that the things that you already like are actually getting you to be towards achieving your health goals.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, the self-awareness is really the key here. The one video, as a last question for you, that I saw is just being aware of some of the warning signs, especially around your feet and your calves or ankles. It's somewhere around the bottom parts of your area. I found that fascinating. So when someone has issues there, like talk to me about some of the warning signs that someone should just be aware of that may be leading to poor health.
Yeah, well, I mean, the feet are people's feet are things are an area of our body that we tend not to think a lot about when we're not putting on our shoes. Like you put on your shoes, you're looking at your feet.
That's it.
And if your feet hurt, then you pay a lot of attention. Oh, I can't believe these shoes don't fit well, or they're too tight, or like women will say, I can't be going around in heels, not with these dogs, But the reality is that our feet are just another part of our body. We got a lot of nerves, a lot of blood vessels that run through them, and when our nerves or blood vessels are compromised, great examples with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, big problems with feet. The blood vessels the vascular system's not healthy in type 2 and type 1 diabetes over a long period of time. The small blood vessels start to close off. Now you're not getting good circulation. The nerves that also are in our feet or throughout our body, but also in our feet, rely on blood vessels to keep the nerves alive. They need a blood supply as well. When the blood supply dies next to the nerves start to die. When the nerves dies, you lose sensation. And one of the big problems in people with diabetes is that they have neuropathy, or the loss of sensation in their feet. And what happens when you lose sensation in your feet? Man, you could be stepping on a piece of glass, a rock, a thumbtack. You won't even feel it, right? Think about it. Like if you had sensitive feet and I took you onto the beach and it's a very smooth, beautiful sand, you feel really good. You go onto the gravel by the parking lot, ouch, 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 right? Like now you walk on some glass, that's going to really sting you. Now, the thing with feet is that we need the sensation in our feet to know that we're in trouble, right? And by the way, if you cut yourself and you don't have nerves, you don't look at the bottom of your feet. Very rarely do people look at the bottom of the feet. And some people who are heavy, if they're overweight or obese, they can't even see the bottom of their feet, all right? And if you're older, you probably have trouble turning your leg in a way where you can look at your bottom of your feet. If you've injured your foot and you have neuropathy because you've got vasculopathy, because your blood vessels are sick, your nerves are sick, you don't have sensation, you stepped on a rock and you didn't know that it was a rock and it cut your foot or a piece of glass, now that thing is going to get infected because your foot is in a shoe that's packed with bacteria, and you will have a festering infection in there that you won't even feel. So a lot of people with diabetes wind up discovering they have these foot ulcers, and I work in this area, that need to be healed up, all right? Oh, by the way, if you've got sick blood vessels, if your blood vessels aren't healthy, now you can't have angiogenesis, blood vessel growing, to heal your wound either. And that's why in diabetes, one of the most common causes of amputation is and disability is infection on the foot. So that's one of the examples of blood vessels and nerves feeding themselves and being codependent, and how we would actually pay attention to them. Now, the other thing I would say with feet that's really interesting is that, and again, I'm trying to bring up examples of everyone will recognize. You ever, okay, so let's say most people weigh between 100 and 200 pounds on average, right? That's a lot of weight to put on the bottom of your foot. Got two surfaces, you're putting all that weight on the top of it, right? So you ever try to lift a 50-pound suitcase by yourself? Like at a luggage, like you're at the baggage container? Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy, yeah.
All right? Now try to put 200, 150, 200, three of those luggages at the same time for a 150-pound average person. Man, that is like so much weight. That is going on our feet all the time, all right? Now, if you don't have sensation on the bottom of your feet, that heavy weight will compress your blood vessels. Now you're not getting any circulation in your feet, and your feet will start to die, all right? So this is another important function of blood vessels and nerves because we are, you might not realize this, but our feet are programmed to send signals to our brain. When we've got too much pressure on our feet, we move. Think about standing in line trying to get into a concert. All right, what do? You're sitting there talking with your friends. You shift back and forth.
Fidgeting.
You fidget. You go back and forth. They're balls to your feet. You go up and down. You go for a little walk on the side. Those are all prompted by our feet text messaging our brain saying, "Hey, dude, move around a little bit. We need more blood flow here." Okay. So again, these are all sort of little subtle things with our feet that people might not realize is happening, that it's actually very, very important to pay attention to.
Fascinating. Well, I think that's a great way to close that insightful thought that people can leave with. Where can people find you, Dr. William Li?
Yeah, well, first of all, you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Dr. Dr. William Li, L-I.
Yep.
I also have a website, Dr. William Li. My handle is at Dr. William Li, all spelled the same way. I'm on all the platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Yeah, check me out. And by the way, I have a newsletter that I put out every week on a Friday, and I put all kinds of nuggets out there that people are interested in actually signing up. It's a free newsletter. My mission is actually to get information out because I'm drinking from the fire hydrant of information about health, especially food and health, but diet and lifestyle issues as well. And I just feel like this is kind of information that people can use. And if you like the way that you've heard me give little tips, that's what I always try to do is give people practical tips. Take it from the ivory tower and make it something that people can use.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate just the conversation, but also just having studied your content. I think it's a breath of fresh air where you just kind of there's no fluff in your content. You get to the research, you talk about what's actually valuable for people. And I think it's refreshing because in a world of influencers talking about restriction and what you cannot eat, for you, it's just you're teaching people that food is a healing property. It's something that you should look to, and just about healing and really transforming your relationship with food that most of us have been neglecting for so much of our lives from childhood. So I really appreciate that, Dr. William Li. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Bye, everybody.